Wow, it's windy out there. Hey T, so it's cool that you tried, I guess. I don't know what else to really tell you. It's what to say. So it was, I'm sure in some ways it was helpful to read the emails you forwarded me from Lisa. I gotta say though, for a while I had a lot of uncertainty. I mean, it's just, the thing is it wasn't necessarily uncertainty about me even, necessarily. There were lots of things that happened that seemed pretty clear cut, and they I'm trying to think of how exactly to phrase this, but what I'm thinking of is this. I was just reading a Robert B. Parker novel the other day at work, and it was about this black guy who was accused of killing this white co-ed in Cambridge somewhere. And a lot of the people were white, upper class, Bostonian, rich people, and they were all liberals and weird and all that. And the one cop that was black, Spencer asked him about that. He says, I hear nigger an awful lot in this case when I'm talking to people. And the black cop says, yeah, I heard that a lot myself. Don't get me wrong, sometimes it means these people are racist, bigoted assholes. And the other times, sometimes I think it just means that they're not really racist, they're just angry at him for doing the bad thing. And the bad thing is so horrible that, in a way, racism becomes their defense. They have to think of this guy as some sort of animal. Clearly, he has to be some sort of animal, because if he's not, then that means he's just like us. And if he's just like us, that's kind of a horrible thought. So it becomes, they don't necessarily think to themselves, thinking that this guy's an animal because he's black is horrible. It's just, they just sort of do. It insulates them from some of the harsher realities. Somebody does something terrible and they just can't say to themselves, how is this that this guy did this horrible thing? People are just like that. It's knowledge that hurts them. So they just make a way for it to go away, make it better. So reading the email that you sent me and seeing what Lisa wrote, I can understand why she's writing what she's writing. I mean, we're talking about a person who picks and chooses stuff that is written down. And as far as she's concerned, all that really matters is pretty much how things kind of affect her. I mean, she said quite clearly in her letter, if he loved me, why would he say that he would have killed me if he lived together? That's taken so out of context. I think we were talking, it was sometime after the grandmother incident, the first time, second time, the third time. It's probably the third time. I was talking about it, and my comment, it was just anguish. It was like, what the hell is wrong with you? Tell me why you keep doing this. Why won't you just let it go? Did you not think it was horrible? Did you not think that it was bad? I mean, you apologized. Did you just not believe it? Did you not remember the throwing up, the crying, the yelling? I don't remember exactly what I said, but it was something along the lines of, do you understand how much I hated you when you did that? How much I hated that it happened, and I hated that you did it? Do you understand how badly I felt? It was horrible. It was. I would have been afraid of what would have happened if I was there living with you and you did that. It was so bad. It's like I might have shot you or something in a moment of anguish. Do you understand that that is wrong and that you keep doing it? It was absolute, not just frustration, but absolutely being completely perplexed. Perplexed. Like, why would someone do that? It just doesn't make any sense. The first time, look, I totally understand. The first time she did it, whatever's wrong with her is what's wrong with her. That's why she demanded an apology. But when she saw how badly it happened, how badly it worked, how badly it did not get her the desired result, how it did not get her to have me do what she wanted, how it got her the exact opposite, how it apparently caused me a load of hurt and really bothered me and made me freak out and scream and yell and just lose it. You would think she wouldn't do it again, but she did, and she kept doing it. And it just doesn't make any sense. It's not something I can understand, except in a very sort of detached way. I often, when I look back and see her things that she writes in her blogs, she loves writing that she was never important to me, that she was only an experiment or something. And I find that sort of funny. I mean, there's an experiential way that I had difficulty dealing with her because she was just... How do you even describe it? Hold that thought. The thing is, I really can't explain it well without getting angry most of the times. Because it's useless. It's useless and it's stupidness. I mean, there's that Nicolas Cage movie with Don Cheadle in it, and the chick, he's in a convenience store, and Don Cheadle's the person, and the woman customer buys something for $1, and it's like 99 cents, whatever, and so Cheadle gives her change for a 10, and he counts it out to her, and she doesn't say anything, and he gives her a penny, and he gives her 9 ones, and she takes the change, puts it in her pocket, she starts to go leave, and he says, "Is there anything else I can help you with? Did you need anything else?" And she says, "Nope," and she leaves. And then Nicolas Cage gets to the counter, and he looks at him, and he says, "Did you see that? She sold her honor for $9. And then he shakes his head. Anything that I've ever said or done that you take out of context to make it bad, to make it sound worse than it was, or to try to cheat somehow and make it something into it to what it isn't, that doesn't have anything to do with me. Lisa's a huge fan of saying that I never said that I loved her, and that isn't true. I'm not a huge fan of saying I love you, and I actually stopped being a huge fan of her saying I love you early on in our relationship when she started doing things that eventually ended up being the stuff in the notebook. It just didn't... The whole notebook project was something that's one of the areas. There's many areas in that whole letter that just sort of make me angry. It's the absolute stupidness of it. When I went there to Portland in September and was sitting there, there is sometimes... There's a thing that happens when you talk to someone an awful lot. You just sort of get used to how they talk. And the thing to realize about Lisa is that her primary motivating force or whatever, the thing that seems to be driving her, is not being in trouble, not being wrong, not looking at things that bother her. If you ask her a question and she gives you a weird sounding answer, or an answer that you've heard a lot of times before, or it just seems weird, then it really sticks out. When I asked her about the naked sending sexy pictures to Keith, she made a huge deal out of the fact that she didn't send naked ones. Now, it's not the best example because that was a flat-out lie. She was lying. She did send him naked ones, obviously. But the fact that she made that distinction is what threw up the red flag. It was like, Laird, I said sexy pictures, and you said I didn't send him any naked ones. That really didn't answer my question. So then I'm going to ask again a different question to still try to get the answer. And she skirted the issue again. It was kind of a hint. That sort of thing only happens when you talk to somebody a lot. Unless you're really, really good at reading people or whatever, or you're that guy off that Lie to Me show. It's just, there are times when you talk to someone and you know that you're just not getting the straight dope. The way that Lisa talked about her first date with Stinger, and I'm gonna call it a day because he brought her flowers and she took cute pictures of them together that are the pictures she uses on her blog all the time now. It looked like a date. She told me up and down that it wasn't a date. She told me that Stinger was a friend of hers from a long time ago, and that he fooled around with her in front of Alan once, and that was it. And she never did anything to encourage him. And she said that a bunch of times. She said frequently, she said that with Keith. She says that with people all the time. And I've actually got, in my emails. I mean, it's there. It's like, guys just fall for me. She says that. I never do anything to encourage them. Which is not true. Obviously. And we had a long conversation about that. And the part of that she obviously focuses on is the fact that I sent one of her emails to me. You know that story, I think, if you've read my blog. How it started was she wanted the picture of Tad, or she wanted the picture Tad took of us, and she wanted me to send it to her phone. I think she's going to use it for a ringtone or whatever. So I tried to send it to her, and I couldn't because her phone was full. Memory was full. So I went to the sent box and I started deleting them. And there were so many messages to me. It's like I see my number. It's like I could look at these messages and remember even some of the messages. And there was tons of stuff sent. And the thing was, it said, when you go to the sent box, it gives you the number and then it gives you the text message. You can read the whole thing simultaneously. And when I got to a thing that said, "Hey babe," and it wasn't my number, I stopped and looked. Now, is that an invasion of her privacy? Yeah, maybe. It wasn't intentional. But after I found the information, I mean, once you open Pandora's box, you can't just forget it. I mean, I'm not a cop. I don't have to have a search warrant. It's not like we're going to have evidence thrown out. It was an illegal search and seizure of your girlfriend's diary. I'm sorry, but her confessing to murdering those puppies just doesn't count. You have to continue dating her. That's what this court's judgment renders. Like, whatever. The thing was, there were some other pages there, and I read those too. And I didn't send that I only sent one to myself. And I read the other pages, and you know what? They were very flirtatious. They were very the sort of thing that would, in fact, fall under the category of flirtatious. encouraging him. We had the same conversation with Keith. It was like, oh, I never did anything to encourage Keith. He just developed a crush on me. I'm like, really? You never did anything? You didn't send him any naked pictures or sexy pictures? Or you didn't tell him how wonderful he was, or you weren't on your best behavior? I remember what she was like when I first started dating her. Lisa's got lots and lots of good qualities. And she's really generous in, showing them off. It's not even that I'm saying she's a horrible person. I'm saying she's got a problem. And the problem manifests itself in a lot of really simple ways. And those ways suck if you're dating her. That's just all there is to it. I don't have any huge desire to go lay them out for Bob to watch. As far as I'm concerned, Bob's been a dick ever since he started commenting on my blog. If Bob's happy with her, good luck. When they first start having fights and arguments, my thoughts, actually to kind of give you my synopsis, the whole thing is this. You look at all the stuff that Lisa says, and it's either true or it's not. It's just that simple. When we're talking about the situation where I read her email and she was telling me she never encouraged Bob, when I showed her the text from her phone, she said, no, I never encouraged Bob. When I said, did you ever say anything that he might have taken the wrong way? No, I never did that. Did you ever tell him you loved him? No, I would never do that. If I did, I said in a friendly way. But I would never do it. It's like, that's a pretty straightforward statement. I didn't do anything wrong, and if I did, I didn't mean it. Okay, that's fine. Except I've already read a text where you call him babe, and you say you love him, and all that. So that's sort of, that's sort of something that kind of needs to be explained. I don't know whether Lisa was doing anything with Bob when I was dating her. It doesn't really matter. Not just because things are over, but because when I sat there, when I was in Portland, she lied to me repeatedly to my face for long periods of time. And I deal with people who are dishonest and not truthful in a very simple way. I just don't stop. I either stop talking about the issue or I don't. If you're lying about something and I have some proof, I want you to explain it. And if you can't, then I am done. That's just all there's to it. Like, okay, so you're lying. If there's a videotape by the Pope of you doing something and you're like, no, I was never there. Well, there's a difference between explaining something and just covering stuff up. And it's like, the difference is, if there's an explanation for something and you explain it, it should sort of make sense. They say truth is stranger than fiction. Yeah, that's because when people make up fictions, or people sell fictions, they have to make sense. Like, if you're reading a mystery and it's like, yeah, the butler did it because he was secretly a woman and he used his magic powers to fly up into the tower and stab the guy and then leave. Well, if you've just been reading a 500-page mystery, you're going to be pissed. You're like, what? Magic powers? My ass. That's the thing about mysteries. They're usually considered play-fair fiction. The author gives you all the clues or points to them, and if you don't figure it out, it's because you're not clever enough or you don't know what it means, not because they threw in the magic flying butler at the end. So when Lisa's saying, oh, I never encouraged him, I would never tell him that I loved him, I would never do anything like that, when you have a text that says exactly that stuff, then that means what you said isn't true. It's not a question of calling her a liar. It's a question of the facts don't match up with what's going on. And so, if the facts don't match up, then that means either the facts are you or wrong. It's not a question, it's not me who's deciding it. It's not my interpretation. It was my decision to look into it further. To be honest, I don't know that I would have looked into it further if I hadn't been in Portland. But being in Portland really did suck. I mean, there are lots of factors towards... there are lots of positive factors towards going to Portland. Seeing Tad, seeing Lisa, being in Beaverton again, getting a vacation, experiencing things flying. The fact that Lisa paid for everything, the fact that Lisa paid to go out there, those are all positive factors to her credit. But they don't erase everything else. When we had problems, and we did, they were the same sort of problems that we had when we were just talking on the phone. And I mean, maybe the problem with the relationship was that we weren't in the same spot. Maybe if we were living closer to each other, we could have been, physical, and that would have made a difference. But I doubt it, because I kind of know how I am. And I don't like passively covert people. I respond usually to people threatening me and people being violent towards me in a sort of manner. To be violent back and to be offensive back. And people who are covertly hostile, that's the same thing. And I treat it as such. And so that sort of stuff doesn't fly with me. There are, in that letter, some good examples of stuff. A lot of it I found funny. I think it's hysterical where Lisa says, I couldn't trust him with my secret because obviously look at how he's not trustworthy. He showed the notebook to you and everyone. Lisa blogged about the notebook. The notebook was her trying to do something good. It was flawed. It was deeply flawed because Lisa isn't really about changing. I mean, we've gone over that whole, the main theory, the main deal, the main thing with Lisa. It all boils down to anything that hurts Lisa's feelings are bad. If Lisa's feelings get bad, then anything she does is okay with her. And that, to me, that is a horrible way to live. Lisa is not so messed up that she thinks that many of the things that she did that were bad are okay. She knows they're wrong. She knows that a lot of the stuff that she did, I don't know about the lying and the making up, the way she makes up stories. Matt's got a theory that once she edits her reality, it just stays that way. I do not honestly know whether Lisa is an idiot or crazy or whatever. I would like to think that the night we had a hour-long conversation, there was something that she did that I didn't like, and I tried to talk to her about it, and she didn't like that I used the word emo to describe her. So we talked about it. She didn't like that. She didn't want me to use the word emo. We discussed it. It got discussed. We didn't talk about what it was that I was asking her not to do. I talked about how it made me feel, how I didn't like it. We didn't talk about that. No, that wasn't up for discussion. That was ignored. We talked for an hour and she basically made excuses for, I don't even remember what it was. And for the most part, I wasn't even all that angry. I was just like, that doesn't make any sense. Why are you saying that? And she just didn't like it. And it didn't go anywhere. And she couldn't get out of it. And it sucked. And then we did this for an hour. And I said, look, we are talking about how you feel about me using the words emo. I was very, very precise about it. I was like, there's 3 different deals here. I said emo 3 times. Every time I said it, we talked about it. I said this other problem, you haven't discussed it. You don't like how it makes you feel, so we're not talking about it. I don't want you to do this anymore, but we're not talking about it. After that hour-long discussion, we had an hour-long discussion about the phrase focus. Lisa said that she was not focusing on her feelings in this discussion. And I'm like, how do you even get that? Look, I said there's a problem. Let's talk about this problem. And you didn't. You talked about something else. So how is that not focus? She wouldn't let it go. She was like, I'm right, you're wrong. I'm like, okay, let's look at it in the dictionary. Let's read the definition of the word focus. Big surprise, I'm pretty good with words. The definition of the word focus, no big surprise, was exactly what I thought it was. Exactly. Lisa was focusing on her issue rather than what I asked her to. Did that make a difference? No. That was kind of the point with Lisa. Things never, ever made a difference. And there were times, she often said she didn't like the way I talked to her, which I get. Nobody likes to be yelled at. Nobody likes to be cussed at. I get that. And I'm totally, you know what? I'm totally fine with that. But there's also more to that question than just out of the blue discussion. There is the whole talking about something and they're just being stupid bullshit. Just stupid shit that was always real simple, but it never ever added up. Lisa says she's going to do something and she doesn't. She doesn't do it. It's not her fault. It was just that simple. Hey, you said you were going to do this thing. Yeah, I didn't. Why are you always judging me? Why are you always this? Why are you always that? It was that sort of thing. And there was a lot of it. When she wanted me to come up for New Year's Eve, I guess if I was going to come up with a really good explanation of the process or the problem or whatever, it's this. Lisa says in her book, in her little letter to you, if Michael really loved me, somebody who really loves you doesn't say, I won't come see you until things are better, until you prove that you care about me, or whatever it was that she wrote. And it's like, yeah, that's a good statement. Usually, people who love you don't say that sort of thing to you. But it's not an absolute. I mean, you're not a child. There are extenuating circumstances. And I would tend to think that my trip to Portland was a pretty damn extenuating circumstance. When Lisa found out I wasn't having sex with her the first time, she told me I was just like Alan Spahn. He never loved her. He was that way to her. I was that way too. Lisa spent all the time that I'd known her talking about how Alan Spahn was the boogeyman, how he was so horrible, how he was so bad to her, how he was such a horrible, abusive person. We're talking about a guy who asked her to strip so that this homeless dude could jack off looking at her, and that would get him some of the homeless dude's drugs. This is the guy that she compared me to. And why did this happen? Why did she say such a horrible thing? Because after telling me that she didn't encourage Bob, and she didn't encourage Bob, and the letter that she wrote didn't mean what it said, and she just didn't encourage Bob, just totally denying the letter, totally denying the text. Probably an hour and a half of denying the text, and absolutely denying everything until she saw the letter, and then after the letter she just stepped up the volume. I mean, that's what she does. Total scorched earth politics. I mean, you're hateful to me, you're horrible, you're the worst person ever, I'm gonna cry now. Because she knew there was no way out. That is what happened when I went to see her in Portland. we'd been working on things in the notebook, and she hadn't been making a lot of progress. And when you're talking about progress, it's not that she wasn't doing enough. She wasn't doing anything. Lisa's not a retard, but she acted like one. She would read a book, and then it just wasn't there. She just didn't care about doing things differently. She was basically okay with what happened. And that's just not alright. I mean, it's not like I sat her down and said, you gotta do this shit in the notebook. You do this shit or I'm done with you. She came to me out of the blue and was like, you know what? We should be thinking about getting married. We should be thinking about doing it by blah, blah, blah. You know, to give Nana the grandkids that she always wanted. And I was like, okay, well, I don't think we're quite ready to be married. And she's like, well, what do you mean? You don't want to marry me? That's not really what I said. Like, there was this thing that often happened with her is if you disagree with what she's saying, she will allow you to disagree, but she will change what you say to be something stupid or, worse, or I don't know. I mean, I get that it's emotional manipulation, but it's like, no, we are not in the place where we are, where people should be to be married. Well, what should that be? And I'm like, well, there's some problems that we've got. Well, what are those problems? Well, have you noticed how? And that's when I started talking about how things were going. It wasn't a stop doing this crap or I'm never gonna see you again. I'm not like some sort of monster or anything. That's like the obvious point. I was like, look, when you and I talk about stuff, if I say something that you don't like, you just forget it. You ignore it. It doesn't register. You say, hey, I think we should go to Taco Bell tomorrow. And I go, no, I don't really like Taco Bell. And then the next time we talk, you're like, hey, so we're going to Taco Bell, right? No, I don't like Taco Bell. And then we're out driving and it's like, hey, let's go to Taco Bell. That's not the best example, by the way, because not only was there the whole ignore, like, oh, you don't want to go to Taco Bell? There was more than that. There was also the, why are you so mean to me? You don't have to yell. I don't like the way you talk to me. It's like, really? What the fuck is wrong with you? I keep saying every day I don't like Taco Bell, and every day you keep saying, hey, we need to go to Taco Bell. There's so many examples of times throughout the time I was dating her where it was so perplexing to me because I just wanted to understand how it was she could do what she did. I talked to her one day about, hey, you wrote in your blog about all the money you spent on me, and you know what? My job sucks, and I'm struggling, and I'm not, making my bills, and I'm feeling kind of like a loser. And so you going around telling people that you spent money on me like that, it's kind of like you're kind of using that as a weapon. Like, I had to explain that to her, and she's like, well, what do you mean? I'm pointing out that I'm kind of a loser and can't, and you buy me a lot of stuff, it makes me feel like we're not equal, like I'm not. It makes me feel bad. She's like, oh, okay, well, I don't have to do that, I'm sorry. The very next day, Elmer said something she didn't like. He caught her. He absolutely caught her. Her dumbass was saying that I was a sociopath because some of the criteria on her list described me. And I was like, why would you say that? Explain to me why you would do that. And the honest answer is because if Lisa could get me to think that I was a sociopath, then I wouldn't think that what she's doing was wrong. It was codependent, I get it. If you love someone, you don't want them to be a sociopath. Unless the most important thing in the world to you is you not being, you not being wrong. When I put that on my blog, I'm like, why why is she saying that I'm a sociopath? That just doesn't make any sense. Like, why would you want to do that? And Elmer's response is, no, the real question is, why would you care what some dippy woman who calls you a sociopath if she thinks so little of you? He nailed it right on the head. He absolutely got it right. If you're dating a girl and she's trying to convince you that you're a sociopath, you should, it's one of two things. Either you A, are a sociopath, or B, she's pretty fucked up. And you should just avoid her. Lisa absolutely threw a fit. You can read about it in the archives of my Vox. And what did she defend herself with? Did she talk about any of the things we shared? Did she, in short, do anything but exactly what I asked her not to do? No. I spent lots of money on Michael, and she actually came out with a list of how much she spent on me to prove that she loved me. So the next day when I talked to her about it, I was like, look, didn't I just ask you not to go around telling people how much money you spent on me because it kind of bothers me and it hurts my feelings? It's not so much that she's so thoughtless. It's that every little thing, anytime anything hurts her feelings, it's the biggest deal in the world. She's like the most sensitive person in the world when it comes to her feelings, but she could not give a shit about yours. It's just not the same thing. I coined a phrase: pain is a currency only she can spend. If somebody I know says that she's stupid, she throws a fit. But she has no problem saying I'm stupid. She has no problem writing about how Bob says I'm stupid, or her mom says I'm stupid, or anything even worse. It just doesn't factor to her. It just doesn't make a difference. It's just not the same deal. It took me a long time to notice and understand that, and it really, really, really was frustrating. Because there would be times when things would happen like that, and I'd be like, okay, so you remember me asking you not to tell people, right? Yeah. How come less than 24 hours later you're still doing it? Well, he insulted me. Okay. Well, why don't you take that down and write something else? I don't have to. I can write whatever I want. He insulted me. Okay, but again, we're talking about you hurting my feelings, and you're not... Like, I don't have to take it down. I have the right to say whatever I want. Okay. It was just... How is it that you can say that you care about me and then do that? That was the thoughts in the back of my head. Jump forward sometime. Lisa wanted me to come up at the end of the year. That's the portion of the letter she sent you where I said I'm not going to come up and see her until things improve. So, how did the conversation go? Oh, she called me up. She's like, hey, come up and see me. And I said, fuck you, you're a dumb bitch. I'm not coming up till you do something better, you fucker. Obviously, that's not how the conversation went. I explained to her because I wanted her to understand I didn't want to go up to Portland again. Look, the last time I went, it really sucked. She lied to me about Bob. She lied to me about some other things. She did stuff that I just don't approve of. Little things like lying to my face tend to bother me. And there's something that's even deeper than that, which is, it was the whole chronology. I was there for 3 or 4 days, and it didn't get any better. And it didn't improve. But she also didn't fuck anything up. I'm a firm believer that if somebody has a problem or whatever and they're working on it, then there's going to be stuff that they try that isn't going to work. Makes sense? Like, Like, yeah, like, hey, what happened? I forgot. Okay, did you do anything about what happened? Well, I said I was going to do something, and I forgot. Okay. There's only so many times that somebody can say that to you. To me, it's like 3 maybe, before you say to them, hey, look, here's the deal. You are not someone to be trusted. You say, I'm not going to do that, and then you do. That needs to change. And if they agree, then they need to do something about it. It's just that simple. And that something needs to be something tangible. Because that's the only way you can tell whether they actually are doing anything about it. It largely doesn't even matter. She has this huge thing about specific plans. Oh my gosh, you didn't have any specific plans. What you did didn't matter. It was a whole big deal. There again, a direct quote taken out of context makes everything okay for her. If you keep saying, I'm going to do something and you don't, I'm going to work on this, I'm going to change, or I'm going to read this book, or I'm going to do this. When you call the person back, you're like, hey, it's Tuesday. Remember we talked yesterday? You said you were going to read 10 pages in your book a day. How's that going? I didn't read the 10 pages. Okay. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You get to a certain point where you're like, okay, you're not reading it. Are you doing it or not? Are you... That was one of the... That was actually the same issue that we had with apologies. Oh my gosh. That apology bullshit kills me. I even talked about it with Tad, and Tad sort of understood what I meant at the end. It's not like I said, your apology does not meet the standard apology criteria. Most of the time when Lisa would apologize about something, it didn't mean anything, because she didn't do anything about it. She did not do anything different. She just apologized. As far as it matters, her apologizing is all that matters. Once she apologizes, it's done. It's like if you're a Catholic doing penance. You know, you confess your sin, it's forgiven, it's done. You said your Hail Marys or whatever, and it's over. The thing about that is, you can't just go and do it again. I mean, that's not really an apology then. And also, the way Lisa talks about apologies has to do with her. It doesn't even have to do with you. There were so many times where she would say, well, I'm sorry I'm sorry I didn't do good enough for you. Covertly hostile bullshit. Seriously. I'm sorry that my efforts aren't enough to make you happy. Okay, well, you said you were going to do something and you didn't. What were your efforts? What do you mean? What were your efforts? Like, you said you were going to do it, you didn't. What did you do? Why are you so horrible? It was like, oh, I tried. By doing what? See, for the longest time, I thought she just didn't understand things. I mean, that was something she said all the time. It doesn't make sense in my brain. I don't understand that. That doesn't make sense. Like, okay, well, so trying to do something is a book. And what you do when you're trying are individual chapters. You said you were going to work harder at this, or you're going to try harder, or you're going to do this thing. So you said you were going to do it, and you've already blown it, 4 times. You say, oh, I'm going to do it, I don't. I'm going to do it, I don't. I'm going to do it, I don't. To your mind, is that the same thing? You're like, I'm going to do this, and you just never have to? Or is there ever a point when you have to say, okay, look, I keep saying that I'm going to do this, and I keep forgetting, and now that I know that, I have to do something about it. Whether it's Post-it notes or, tying a string to your finger, any one of those things people do to remember stuff. I mean, we both had smartphones. If you need to remember to do something every day, you can set your smartphone alarm to go off every day at a certain time. You can set your smartphone alarm to go off every 115 minutes if you want, and display a message on your screen that says, remember to do this. That sort of thing. Any sort of thing. I was extremely clear. Like, this is all I'm looking for. I just want you to do something You say you're going to do this thing, and you don't. And so apparently trying harder isn't really good enough. So just do something different. And the problem is we were really talking about two different things. We're talking about a person who says they want to do something, or says they're going to do something, they don't really mean it. And that's just not okay. So I actually was very patient, I thought, and very caring when I explained how going to Portland sucked. The problems that we had, they were still the same problems we were having. Bottom line, when you're talking to someone and you're in a relationship with them, if you have a problem with them and you talk to them about it and you bring it up and you mention it and you want it addressed and they don't address it, it's a problem. You can say, oh, well, they didn't say it nice enough, or they didn't say it the right way, or they didn't do whatever. And to some degree, that could, you can make a good case for that. If the person didn't react to your problem the way that you want them to, that is a pretty good statement to make. I mean, you can say, every time I did this, he just yelled at me and he was just hateful and mean. And that's something that you can say, and it may be just a simple recrimination. It may be, oh, he did something wrong, I did something wrong, it's even. Or that could be a totally valid point. But that's not how things were. So I talked about how I felt about going to Portland. I talked about some of the problems. I actually believe that if I'd just been stupid or insulting to her, then it wouldn't have been as bad as it was. I think the real mistake that I made when talking to her about not wanting to go to Portland was that I explained how what she did hurt me. And I think that she understood that she had done a lot of things wrong. And not doing things wrong is a huge deal with Lisa. I mean, she hates it. And as we've already kind of covered, when Lisa does something wrong and she knows it's wrong, she likes to get out. She doesn't like that situation. She doesn't like that feeling. And it's not one she's comfortable with. And so she does whatever she can to get out of it. That's kind of her whole deal. I mean, that whole thing about anything that hurts you, anything you do because of it is okay, means that Lisa says she loves me, and she knows that when you love someone, you don't lie to them. I mean, unless it's something cute, lives are in jeopardy or something, the Nazis are coming, it's a totally different thing. Lisa knows that if you're talking to someone and they show how you're lying to them, that if you don't come clean or you don't change or you don't do something different, she knows that's going to hurt them. She knows they're not going to like that. And she understands that concept. She understands that if she was talking to me and I said something that she thought was a lie and I just wouldn't address it, I would just be like, oh, no. I was hanging out with that naked girl in my room and we were mud wrestling because that's what we do. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm a professional mud wrestler. She wasn't okay with that and I just ignored it. She wouldn't do that same behavior. I mean, she absolutely, the phrase hypocrite was one that I used with her with some regularity. And it is a phrase that bears looking up if you don't know what it means. A hypocrite is a person who pretends a certain virtue that they don't have. It also extends to somebody who says that they believe something and their actions don't follow through. Lisa is a firm believer that lying is bad and you shouldn't do in a relationship. To her. She absolutely thinks that people should be honest in a relationship if they're talking to her. If we're talking about her talking to you, it's a totally different issue. That's just how that went. That's how it was. We talked about why I didn't want to go back to Portland until things were better, different. There was some progress. There was some... I asked her over and over again, try and show me that you're making progress. Show me that you're making effort. Fail. Make some mistakes. Do some stuff wrong. Try some stuff that doesn't work. She was keeping a notebook, and the notebook was largely empty. It was just blank. It's like, hey, you had this problem. It's been 2 months. What have you been doing about the problem? I've been working on it every day. And what does that look like? And there's nothing. It's like I begged her to start doing stuff that would show that she cared. And she chose not to. And why did she choose not to? Largely, I think, because she didn't like what I had to say. I said something that hurt her feelings. She wanted me to say, oh, I want to go to Portland and have sex with you and eat Chinese food and be in bubble baths. And I wouldn't. And I didn't. Because going to Portland again wouldn't have solved the problem. And to be totally honest, it wasn't my problem. There was lots of stuff that I could have done better in my relationship with Lisa. But from beginning to end, they weren't the same things. When you're talking about a timeline of things that happened, it's like this example that I'm using. So what happened when I said, hey, I don't want to come up there before the end of the year for New Year's Day because of these reasons? I don't feel comfortable. There was a lot of stuff that went wrong last time. It really sucked. There were lots of things that happened that were bad, and there's been other issues. There hasn't been anything really in the plus columns. Like, Lisa was good at buying me stuff. Lisa was good at listening. Lisa was good at the things she was good at, and that was a list you could have made in the very beginning. And then you could have made a list of things she tried to work on things, and there would be nothing there, really. And it wasn't like I dictated these things to her either, which is more bullshit. She said I think we should be married. We should be married pretty soon. And I said, we're not really there yet. And she said, well, what would make us there? And so I talked about that stuff. And she was like, well, you know what? I want to work on that stuff. What kind of things can I do? What can we do? That's what happened. And there was nothing wrong with that. Of course, the first time she went to a therapy session with a therapist, she went to the therapist, and because she didn't like therapy and she thought it was a bad idea, she said, my boyfriend thinks I should change these things about myself. What therapist is going to go with that? They're going to say, why does your boyfriend feel that way? Or why is that? What do you think? What's the problem? I mean, obviously, there's no cleaner, easier, better way to sabotage your relationship without flat out lying. She would have done better to go into that therapy session and say, my boyfriend wants to have a threesome with this other girl and I don't particularly want to, but I'm going to because I love him. There were times where I would do things like this, where I would say something and it wouldn't matter. I talked about, I could have just said to Lisa, hey, you know what? Going to Portland last time really sucked. You're not a good enough person, and until you are a good enough person, I don't want to come there. I didn't do anything like that. I wasn't like that at all. And yet, that's what she reduces it to. Because that's really what matters to her. Her feelings were hurt, and that's what's crucial. So it's the first of the year. We talked about this for a long time. It was moderately hostile. She didn't like what I had to say. She treated it accordingly. She didn't have a lot to argue. I mean, she didn't have much to say, except she didn't like what I had to say, which is kind of not the same thing. So what happened? When it started getting closer to Valentine's Day, what happened? We had a conversation. Now, I'd already talked to her about how I felt about coming up to Portland, and she said, hey, you should come up to Portland for Valentine's Day. And I said, I kind of don't. Do you remember the conversation we had about at the beginning of the year? Yeah. Well, I kind of feel that same way. It's been a month. What did you really do with what I said? I'll be honest, at this point, I had this idea. I noticed certain things. Same way I couldn't just unremember that I'd read her text, I couldn't unnotice the number of times where I'd said or done something that she didn't like, where she just ignored it. I couldn't just forget that I had that conversation. And so, did I say to her, hey, you're a dumb bitch? What the fuck is wrong with you? Are you too stupid to remember what I said last time? Yeah, absolutely. That was the way I handled the conversation. Because I'm so abusive and such a horrible person. No. What I said was, do you remember what I said before? No response. Do you remember us having a conversation around the first of the year? No response. I think you should come to see me because you love me, and I think you should do this, and I think you should do that, and there was lots of other stuff she had to say, but she, it was pretty simple. It was like, look, you asked me to come up to see you. I told you I didn't really feel like coming to see you. I told you why. I told you that I felt insecure. I told you that I felt bad. I told you that things sucked. I told you that things didn't work last time, and that I wouldn't feel comfortable coming up there. I didn't want to waste your money, your time, my time. I didn't want to go do that until something had changed, and that something was you. I wanted there to be something that I could point to give me confidence. I wanted to be able to say, look, I wanted to basically be able to compare and contrast. When I first started dating Lisa, she was reading self-help books. In theory. She really read these books? Doesn't matter. There were some books she said she read where she didn't. There's no way that she could have. Because she couldn't remember the vocabulary. She couldn't remember what they said to do. She couldn't remember the principles. There was no part of that reading that book that was actually real to her. Basically, anytime she read a book, it just told her to do what she wanted to do anyway, and that she was right to begin with. That was pretty much how that worked. I'm going to hit pause here for a minute.